Actually, behind of me, you see the North Korean school in Kyoto, Japan. Of course, this school is sponsored by North Korean government. Today, I will talk about the North Korean schools in Japan. Today, there are 64 schools which are sponsored by North Korean government. About the system of the schools, there are 4 types of schools ranging from kindergarten to university. Students go to North Korean schools for the same period like Japanese students. It starts from primary school for 6 years, junior high school for 3 years, high school for 3 years, and then university for 4 years. Today, in total, about 5,000 students go to North Korean schools in Japan. In the schools, generally almost all classes are conducted in Korean language except Japanese and English languages classes. There are also classes like math, science, Korean language, Korean history, Japanese history, geography, and so on. Because it's North Korean school, this country's ideology is also taught. Except North Korean schools, in Japan also exist schools which are sponsored by South Korea, but they are fewer. Today, there are only 6 South Korean schools all over Japan. 4 of them are located in Osaka and Kyoto, where the most Koreans live in Japan. South Korean and North Korean schools are totally different and they are not related to each other. As for North Korean school's history, it started as a Korean language school. Korean language school started in Japan in 1945 to teach Korean language to Korean children who were born and raised in Japan, not to forget their ethnicity, origin, and language. Later, primary schools, junior high schools, and even universities were built. But Japanese government and the United States, which was occupying Japan at that time, didn't want such North Korean schools, so gave the orders to close these schools. Korean people, however, opposed that strongly, so it was finally allowed to run the schools. Since Korean schools don't serve the school curriculum which Japanese Ministry of Education should authorize, it's completely private schools and its graduates don't have a right to enter most of Japanese universities. From the beginning, North Korean schools are sponsored by North Korean regime and an organization called Chongryon, which is in Japanese Chosen Soren. Chosen Soren is an organization which also sponsored by North Korean regime and its headquarters are in Tokyo. This organization was at first established in 1945 as an organization which followed a socialist ideology, but it was soon banned. Today's organization was established in 1955. Since there are no diplomatic relations between Japan and North Korea, it also functions as North Korea's embassy in Japan. But this organization generally operates schools and some companies. In the organization, there are members who belong to the Workers' Party of Korea and adopted North Korean nationality. There are pictures from North Korean schools. I've never visited the school, so I found them on the internet. The classroom itself looks almost the same as Japanese school's one. However, in the past, in classrooms of North Korean schools used to be displayed North Korea's leaders' portraits. But from around 2003, such portraits were removed because thought that such portraits were not appropriate for small children. In schools, pupils and students sometimes wear Korean traditional costume. Some women wear costume which is called chimachoguri, and men and other women wear normal uniforms. From a long time ago, the existence of North Korean schools is very controversial since there are many issues which haven't been solved between Japan and North Korea. In my opinion, such schools shouldn't exist in Japan. In the first, the schools are sponsored by North Korean regime, which is known as a notorious country in the world, and it's not appropriate for people who were born and raised in Japan. That is a democratic country. This is my opinion about North Korean schools.